Yep.
Roland,
Yes.
we're here because you've probably been with the club longer than anybody on any kind of level. And by that I mean you and Frank at the train store. You guys were there when we all started gathering at his shop, especially in the back room where you were scuttling away all the trains for us, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
And anyway, I think that basically it started there, All Gauge Toy Train Association. And because you were one of the first members, we want to talk to you. We want you to tell us how you got started there with Frank's and then, of course, with All Gauge.
Okay. We'll start off with about 1963 when I came to California from New York City. And my background was aircraft mechanic, jet engine specialist in the Air Force, and about 3 or 4 years of that. And then after that, I started working in garages in New York as a mechanic, working on automobiles, what have you. So I had some knowledge, and I have a mechanically inclined brain here, so I'm able to pick up something and, you know, tinker with it and be able to repair it. So I came to California, like I said, in 1963, it was January, and I was looking for jobs here in California, especially in San Diego, and there was no openings. It was really a bad time for looking for employment. There was no openings on the flight line for mechanics. I looked at the automotive places, and they had old-time guys working 40 years on the line like that, so they didn't need a guy who was 20-something years old. So with that, I picked up odd jobs, dishwasher at one time, mechanic at one place, just a grease monkey they call it. I also worked at another gas station pumping gas. And this went on for a couple of years. And with that, I got hired as a chauffeur and bodyguard for an old timer. And he was a train enthusiast. He liked HO. So when I drove him around in my own car, we stopped at Gladys Toy Trains on University Avenue. We stopped at Bill Kingston's, the Whistle Stop in Hillcrest. And we also stopped at Frank the Trainman's on Park Boulevard. And we'd done this for a short time. And one time he was ill, and he asked me to do him a favor and do his shopping list for him. So I stopped at Frank the Trainman. And Frank Cox there asked me, what kind of job am I doing? And I told him about part-time this, part-time that. He says, do you know anything about electric motors? And I said, nada. So he says, how would you like to learn? I said, I'd like to learn. Yeah, sure, why not? I'm in between jobs, so why not? So in June of 1966, I put a blue apron on, began as an apprentice, working at Frank the Trainman, learning the business. And I mean, when learning the business, I mean inside out. Learning how to take care of clients, read invoices, order parts, and also do the train repairs. So with that, I went ahead and started working, and I would learn by doing. In other words, I'd lean over Frank's shoulder and I'd watch him do something, and I have a brain here that remembers. I have what they call, I'm dyslexic, so there again, I have a problem like reading a manuscript or a book or a manual. I could read it from cover to cover, but couldn't comprehend what I read. But if you did something, and I looked over your shoulder, I'd never forget, wiring, putting something, gears together like that, I would remember this. And I still remember today. Even like parts number, you'd say, well, Roland, what's a part number for a common brush? And I said, the number is 622-121. He said, oh my goodness, do you remember that? I said, yeah, I remember numbers, remember schematic wiring diagrams, all kinds of things like that. So getting back at Frank's there, about 2 weeks in working at Frank the Trainman's, I got a call from LA saying there's an opening for a mechanic. Well, if you remember back in the 60s, the smog was atrocious. You know, you couldn't breathe, your eyes would water, stuff like that. So I asked Frank, I said, how long is this job good for? He says, as long as you like. So I thanked the people back in LA for the opening like that, but I said, I have a job now. So from 1966 of June, all the way until about 1981, about October, November, Frank was getting ill, and he decided to retire and sell the business. So with that, he put an ad in the paper, and it was for sale for $100,000. And some of my clients I knew personally for all these years of working at Frank's, and I worked for Frank's, let me see here, I have to make sure here. 15 years, that was a long time. So I built up a clientele too. So with that, one had said, why don't you buy the shop yourself? I didn't have the coins. So with that, I said, well, I might think about getting a loan. They said, no, we have backers here. So they were able to get together and have backers. So I contacted Frank at the shop there with the backer, and before that, they asked me personally, how much do you think the shop is worth? Well, Frank didn't own the building or the property. He had the business name and the inventory only. So with that, I said, honestly, I looked at the inventory, I said, it's worth about 70 grand, 75 maybe. So I offered Frank that with my backers, and Frank turned it down. He said, no, I want 100 grand. So another couple of weeks went by, and the backer said, I put the 85 grand, and which I did. Frank says, no, I'm sticking for 100 grand like that. So with that, this fellow, Jim Cooley, came into the picture, a good friend of Frank's, and he was a landscaper at that time, and he was interested in the shop. So they got together and they decided that they'll sell it to Jim Cooley. And it took about, I would say this was October 31st that I left the business there, because Jim didn't want to have a mechanic or hire a mechanic or pay for a mechanic. So with that, I left the shop. I said, thanks for all the help, stuff like that. And I sat around the house there for about, with unemployment insurance, I'd say about 4 months to April or what have you, of 1982. Meanwhile, I had people call me on the phone and say, hey, Roland, I understand you're not working, Frank's no longer. I said, yeah, I'm at the house here like that. Why waste your talents? Why don't you go ahead and buy some tools, get some lumber, build a workbench, and look for a place to get some parts for. And I said, okay, I'll try that. So sure enough, I went ahead and bought the tools, worked the bench like that. But I had to find out, could I run a business out of Lakeside, out of the home? Was that legal? So I went ahead and contacted, again, a lawyer. And he says, Roland, he says, you know what? You live in Lakeside, it's unincorporated of San Diego, and you can run a business out of your home. And it'll be legal, and it was called Small Cottage Industries. So with that, without having any permits or licenses, I went ahead and I said, okay, fine and dandy, I'm gonna go ahead and do that. But he said, there's a stipulation. You can run a business out of your home, but no neon signs flashing, Roland's Place, electric trains, what have you. And I said, oh, what can I do? He says, well, let me see if there's a loophole. So he went ahead and did a little checking and found out that I could go ahead and take some lumber, build about the size of a footlocker, a caboose, paint it red, make a railroad crossing sign out there, and that would be legal because the people who come by would associate the caboose and the sign with the business. But there was another stipulation. I would have to make sure that no persons that were blocking cars, their cars parking in the driveway, stuff like that, so I had to keep it down. So he said, a wise idea is make an appointment basis. So after a while, I advertised in the yellow pages, I got some business cards and some flyers, and I sent them out like that. And before you know it, I was really getting busy doing train repairs. But then after a while, I said, you know what, let me make the snowball into something else, a business where I have retail. So I went ahead and I bought from Lionel electric trains, sets, individual stock, what have you. And from there, I started looking for pieces, parts where I could get kind of a discount. So I contacted Lionel, and Lionel says, you work in a residential area, not a commercial. I cannot give you a license to be an authorized service station. But we can work with you because you're doing Lionel like that. So the guy is named John Dans, and he went ahead and he said, I'll set up a program for you, and you'll pay about 50% of the parts. So for example, a reverse drum is 50 cents, you pay 25 cents, and I went with that. So I was dealing with Lionel for repair parts. And after a while, I started building the business up, but it took 4 years because those from April all the way to June, let's say like that, I was in the red. Finally, the fifth year, I was on the borderline. The fourth year, I was up there like that. I had to hire, not only had lawyers, but I had to hire a tax consultant. And so the business went on and on and on. And I had a few problems there with my neighbors, like say. I had maybe 2 customers at the same time, and they hadn't blocked the drive like that, so I had to be more cautious, making sure that they wouldn't do that again. So, but here again, working out of the garage like that, I did about, I would say about 40 years, from 1982 to about, I kind of given up the business here in 2021. So I'm calling myself retired.
So you even survived COVID then, didn't you?
I sure did, but there you go. And with that, I put in, actually, with Frank the Trainman and my own business like that, I put in a total of 55 years. And I figured, 55, that's pretty good. That's my lucky number.
Yeah, that's outstanding.
Yeah. Now, getting back to living in San Diego, working for Frank there, my wife and I and my daughter, we lived in an apartment right over Frank the Trainman, so it was real convenient. For 4 years, I could only make 25 steps down to the shop, 25 steps up for lunch, 25 steps down for dinner, and 25 steps, back and forth. So that worked out without having to drive, so that worked out fine.
Kind of curious, before you came along, as far as Frank is concerned, did he have anybody to help him with
Yes, he
repairs?
did. Yes, he did. Back in the early 60s.
Glenn?
Yes, Glenn Williams, right, an older fella.
Yeah.
He worked at Convair for a while, and he actually had a train shop
On
in
C
San
Street.
Yeah, on 11th and C,
Yeah.
called Glenn's Train Shop. Yeah.
But I didn't know if he was still with Frank at that time. I was just
He
curious.
worked for Frank only at Christmas time, like for example, October, November, December, and January, 4 months.
Yeah.
He put in some time there. So it was Frank doing repairs, myself behind the back there, and also Glenn.
Okay, now, of real interest here is how much did your presence there, with what you were able to do for him, enhance his business, Frank's business? I mean, finally he has a guy who knows what he's doing on a full-time basis, meaning you.
Yeah.
Was Frank happy with that?
Yes, definitely, right. Frank was like a second dad to me. He had taken care of me, where when I first was working there, I was short, let's say, I was short $25 at the end of the pay period like that. I said, Frank, you know what? I need a little bit of this. He said, don't help yourself to the till. He takes his wallet out, pays me $25. And the next pay period, I said, Frank, I looked at my check. You didn't take out the 25. Don't worry about it. This went on a couple of times, but I said,
So
he's
you're
really
telling
good
us
to me.
something about Frank that no one ever really knew, in my opinion.
Right.
Everybody got along with him, but he was a good guy is the whole point.
Oh my goodness, I love the guy.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, that's
definitely,
nice.
Yeah. Now, besides Frank was working there with myself and also Glenn, also his wife Helen would help out, and she would take care of the retail part of it. And then in the wintertime, we also had some help with Lucille, which was Frank's daughter.
Yeah.
So there was about 4 or 5 of us working at Christmas Rush.
Yeah, it was pretty. His favorite saying, as I recall, was that during Christmas time, he says, it gets so crowded in here, we couldn't stir him with a stick.
Yes.
I mean, you can remember the sides of that. It was actually 2 storefronts, but they were very small storefronts, and it could get very, very crowded.
Yes. Well, Frank told me that in the early days when he was working, he was as an electrician. He decided to do train repairs in his garage and started buying and selling, and he did the business out of his garage in Cleveland Avenue in San Diego. But neighbors complained. Too much traffic, and too much noise with the air compressor and things like that, so we had to find a retail place, which was on 4310 Park Boulevard. Yes, right.
What, the sign was already there when you came along, obviously. Did he ever tell you any stories about that, how it came about or whatever?
No, he had not. No, not at all.
I mean, it became a symbol. I mean, everybody knew Frank the Train Man, mainly because of that big neon sign with the choo-choo and the smoke coming out and whatnot. It became a cultural landmark is what it was.
Oh, yes, and it's still there yet.
Yeah.
It's in a new building there, and it's on one of the southwest side, I believe.
Yeah.
So the sign is still there, and it works at night still, flash.
So you were part of a phenomenon of trains in San Diego is the whole point.
I think so.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, you took it from Frank's and then moved over to electric trains keep rolling, and you'd still be there if you wanted to be.
Yeah, right. Somebody asked me, well, how'd you come up with electric trains keep, it's a plural word, Roland, using my first name, R-O-L-A-N-D. So with that, I said, well, it goes back to when I was in high school, and one of my girlfriends gave me a birthday card in there, and it was saying some saying, and she said, Roland keeps rolling along.
Oh.
Something like that. So with that, it stayed with me. So with that, when I needed to run a business with a company name, I had to come up with something. So I had, electric trains. How about electric trains keep rolling along? Electric trains keep rolling along was too long for a business card and also for putting on a business check. So I cut the along off. So now it's electric trains keep rolling.
Well, the point is, you made a another cultural phenomenon out of your own name, in addition to Frank the Train Man. So
Yes, yeah.
you're a big guy in trains in San Diego, Roland.
Well, I don't know about that.
Yeah, we think so.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So, and then I had one little story here. While I was working at Frank the Trainman's back in the early 60s, I had a client come in who had, I think it was an Ives old electric train made about around the turn of the century. And this fellow looked like he was about 95, 96 years old, an older gentleman. Sets the box on the counter. Frank says, Roland, come over here and take a look and give this fellow an estimate of what it's going to cost. I looked it over and told him it's going to be so much to repair it and so much for parts. And Frank said, well, take it in the back room. So childishly, I picked it up like this, and the guy said, well, be careful of my train, be careful of my train. And I walked in the back room, and on the floor was a box of old tin marks. So what I did was, I kicked the box over, and I said, oh my goodness, I dropped the train, and it broke up like that. And I said, oh, what am I gonna do? And the guy, I didn't see this, but Frank said the guy went like this, grabbed his heart like that. And Frank said, you ever do that again, you're fired. That was a prank, but there again, it backfired.
Yeah. So that was your one misstep the whole time.
Oh, there's many more, but I'm not gonna say. No, not
You
at
met
all.
obviously a whole bunch of people in that time, especially back there in the 60s, late 60s, who became members of, started All Gauge, you know. So, and you were definitely part of that. So, and you're still with us for that matter.
Yeah, that goes back to many years, 1969. I
That's when
remember
we
being
started,
at Pete Seller's house.
Yeah.
That's where we started.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So again, and Jim, I also brought some pictures here to show you. This is me in the shop and a little inventory I have here. And that way there, you can show it.
The inventory is very impressive, but I want to know who that young guy is in the picture.
And he has hair too.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
anyway, I don't know
that's
Yeah,
me.
hold that up.
but it's pretty neat.
Well, there again, now on the back side of that folder there, it'll show me with the sign and the train on the wall, which the sign helped a lot.
Yeah.
Because people would turn the corner on Lakeside on my street there, and they could see it a block away.
Oh
So
yeah.
that helped a lot.
Pops right out.
Yes, it did, yes.
So, any misgivings or anything? I mean, as I said, as far as we're concerned out here, you were the guy. You treated everybody well, and you were a big cog in our train collecting community. Any misgivings?
Not at all.
How about that? That says a lot.
Besides doing the retail and the repairs like that, I also collected. And in the garage there, besides having the workbench and places for the tools and places for the parts I had, I built a little cubby hole. I call it my man cave. And put shelves on there, and I started collecting trains. And I collected mainly standard gauge. And I collected Lionel and Ives. I collected Dorfan, which is a kind of unusual name, what have you, but there again. So I had 5 different manufacturers that I collected. Marks, Lionel, American Flyer, Ives, and Dorfan.
Mm-hmm.
And today, I still enjoy it, but I don't miss it. You know, I had a lot of fun.
You've moved
55
on.
years, I moved on, right. Now
Yeah.
I can do some fishing.
Good for you. Hey. Anyway, we wanted to, as I said, the whole idea behind this meeting is to get you permanent into our train collecting community.
I appreciate
Because you
that.
are significant
I
within that.
really appreciate that
So,
very much.
Roland, son of a gun, it's been a pleasure.
Same here, Jim.
Right.
Right.
How we doing?
That's great.